Zachary Sterling's world shattered with a single cold whisper amidst the suffocating roar of jet engines at Heathrow Terminal 5. That moment occurred just after Victoria, his wife of 10 years, gave him a passionate kiss and left the scent of expensive perfume lingering on his coat lapel. She had just stepped through security for a business trip to Edinburgh, leaving Zachary and their 8-year-old son standing amidst the hustle and bustle of London. However, as Victoria's elegant figure vanished behind the glass, Leo, a child who had always been quiet, suddenly gripped his father's rough hand. The boy did not cry, but his eyes were dilated with a primal fear tearing at his soul. "Dad, we cannot go home." The boy's voice trembled like dry leaves being crushed underfoot. "I heard Mum talking to Uncle Julian in the garage last night. Mum said that tonight you would have to disappear forever, and she would receive all the insurance money to start a new life." Zachary stood motionless, feeling as though a large block of ice had just pierced through his chest. The wind whistled through the airport's glass panes, carrying the chill of a gray London afternoon. 20 minutes ago, Victoria was still the perfect wife, the talented woman holding a managing director position at a prestigious investment fund. She had smiled, squeezed his hand, and said she would miss them both dearly during her 3-day trip. It was a lie, polished to a razor edge. Zachary stared at the queues of people, desperately searching for a glimmer of hope that his son had misheard, but the trembling in Leo's small palm denied it all. This was no child's prank. It was the naked truth of a brutal betrayal. In Victoria's mind, Zachary was merely a mediocre maintenance engineer, a lowly man specializing in repairing the intricate plumbing and electrical systems within financial buildings. She despised his silence, viewing his devotion as a sign of weakness. Victoria often looked at him with pity, as if he were an obstacle hindering her ascent into the upper class. She had no idea that the very husband she looked down upon was the one who held the blueprints to every secret corner of the city's financial district, a man capable of seeing through complex systems that the naked eye could never perceive. Zachary Sterling was not a weak man. He was simply building a peaceful world for the woman he loved, unaware that he was nurturing a poisonous snake. Fear filled the car as Zachary drove the Land Rover away from the drop-off area. Instead of turning towards Richmond, where their luxury home was located, he pulled into a deserted side road near Hounslow. Rain began to patter on the roof, creating a rapid, tense rhythm. Zachary turned off the engine and looked at his son. "Leo, tell me exactly what you heard, word for word," he said, his voice lowering but filled with authority. The boy began to speak of Uncle Julian, the head of security at his mother's company, who frequently visited their home for late-night business meetings. Last night, while Zachary was on the roof checking the ventilation system, Leo had gone down to the garage to find a forgotten toy. He had hidden behind cardboard boxes and overheard the plan for a staged accident, involving forged medical records to prove Zachary suffered from severe depression and suicidal tendencies. The blood in Zachary's veins began to boil. He recalled the past 6 months, the times Victoria had given him sedatives, claiming they would help with work stress. He remembered how she had suddenly become interested in the terms of his life insurance and asset authorization documents. Every scattered detail now connected into a devastating picture. Victoria wanted to erase him from this life, to claim a massive insurance payout and clear the path for her lover. Julian Vane, the former police officer with a dignified exterior but a hollow heart, was the one facilitating this crime. Zachary looked into the rearview mirror, seeing his face reflected in the dim light of the London sky. A silent but resolute change was taking place in his gaze. He was no longer the gentle husband enduring his wife's criticism. The survival instinct of a man experienced in maintaining the city's most complex structures began to awaken. If they considered him a faulty system to be discarded, he would show them who truly controlled the server. He would not run. He would turn himself into a ghost within the very game they had devised. Leo looked at his father, trust gradually replacing the fear in his clear brown eyes. "Will you fix this, Dad?" the boy asked softly. Zachary reached out to stroke his son's head, the warmth from his hand conveying a solemn promise. "I will fix everything, Leo. I promise." Zachary restarted the engine. The low rumble of the motor echoed through the rain like the growl of a newly awakened beast. He did not drive home. He turned back towards the airport car park, deciding to seek the first trace of the enemy. The London sky darkened, fog enveloping the bridges. But in Zachary's mind, the road ahead had never been clearer. He would protect his son, even if the price was burning down the entire past he once cherished. Tonight, Zachary Sterling officially declared war on betrayal. He knew this battle would have no room for mercy, and every wrong step could lead to the abyss. But seeing Leo's small figure leaning his head against the window, Zachary knew he could not afford to fail. He would make Victoria and Julian realize that the most dangerous thing in this world is not an exposed enemy, but an honest man pushed to the brink. The first chapter of a new life had opened amidst the pouring rain, and Zachary was ready to step into the darkness to find the light for his only son. The fluorescent lights flickered on the fourth floor of the Heathrow car park, creating dancing ghosts on the cold and damp concrete floor. Zachary Sterling sat motionless in the darkness of a recess behind a massive concrete pillar, his breath so light it was almost invisible. Beside him, Leo huddles close, his eyes wide as he followed his father's every move. The silence of the car park was broken by the screech of tires on the floor and headlights sweeping across long rows of cars. A luxury white SUV entered, moving slowly like a predator enjoying the fear of its prey. Zachary's heart skipped a beat when he recognized the cold face of Julian Vane behind the windscreen. The former Metropolitan Police officer stepped out of the vehicle with the poise of a man who held the power of life and death, his black suit cruelly pressed amidst this bleak setting. Julian was not alone, as two burly men with the appearance of professional debt collectors followed behind him. They stopped right next to Zachary's Land Rover, the car Victoria had intentionally left with a rear window cracked open just enough for a hand to pass through. Zachary gripped the specialized handheld camera usually used for inspecting deep underground pipes, his eyes burning with a fire of resentment while his mind coldly calculated every second. He saw Julian pull out a small black plastic package the size of a palm and tightly wrapped in tape. With a practiced and swift movement, he reached through the window gap and shoved the object deep under Zachary's driver's seat. It was not a gift. It was a ticket sending Zachary straight to Wormwood Scrubs prison on charges of possessing Class A drugs, or worse, an illegal weapon. Julian stood up, pulled out his phone, and took photos of the car from 3 different angles as if completing a perfect legal file. He flashed a smug smile, the light from the phone screen reflecting onto his sharp and cunning face. "It is done," Julian spoke into the phone, his voice echoing through the empty space of the car park like thunder in Zachary's ears. "The mouse is in the trap. You can call the Richmond police team right now. Tell them he is in a psychotic state and carrying a weapon. When they intercept him on the way back, everything will end according to the script." Zachary felt the trembling from Leo's shoulders. A mother was asking the police to intercept and arrest her husband with forged evidence, all to clear the path for a clandestine affair and a massive insurance fortune. Victoria's cruelty far exceeded any common logic Zachary had ever known. As the white SUV departed, leaving a faint trail of smoke in the cold air, Zachary stepped out of the shadows. He did not rush to his car. Instead, he walked around the Land Rover with the meticulousness of an engineer searching for a flaw in a faulty system. He knelt down, reached under the chassis, and pulled out a small device with a discreetly blinking red light, a GPS tracker. Victoria did not just want to frame him. She wanted to ensure he would be caught exactly at the location and time she had arranged. Zachary grit his teeth, snapped the device, and tossed it into a nearby bin. He realized that the house in Richmond was no longer a home, but an iron cage already bolted and waiting for him to step inside. "Dad, where are we going?" Leo asked, his voice tiny amidst the vast space. Zachary looked into his son's eyes, seeing his own reflection there. No longer the weak man controlled by his wife, but a warrior who had just reclaimed his sword. "We are going to disappear, Leo, but not because we are afraid. We disappear so that we can attack when they least expect it." Zachary put his son in the car, but he did not start the engine immediately. He pulled a laptop from under the seat, his hands gliding across the keyboard with incredible speed. He was accessing the Heathrow car park security system. a system his company had helped maintain 3 years ago. He knew every command code, every secret gateway that even senior managers were unaware of. In less than 5 minutes, Zachary had extracted the sharp video footage capturing Julian Vane placing the package in his car. He sent copies of that film to 3 different servers located in Scandinavian countries, where even top intelligence agencies would find it difficult to interfere. Victoria and Julian thought they were facing a mediocre repairman, but they had forgotten that the people who build and maintain the systems are the ones who truly own them. Zachary Sterling could fix a skyscraper in the Docklands, and he could also dismantle Victoria's entire life brick by brick if she dared to touch his son. The Land Rover roared and sped away into the thick London fog. Instead of heading west towards wealthy Richmond, Zachary steered east, towards the Docklands area, where old maintenance tunnels and abandoned industrial buildings awaited. That was his territory, the place where he held every secret of this city underground. He knew that tonight the police would storm his house, searching for a madman on the run, but they would only find air. Zachary began to feel the excitement of a predator turning the tables. He was no longer running to survive. He was setting the stage to finish those who had betrayed him. 2 million points of light from the financial towers at Canary Wharf reflected upon the river Thames, like the eyes of demons hunting prey amidst the London night. Zachary Sterling was not leading his son into a dead end. He was bringing the boy into the heart of an underground labyrinth he had spent 15 years mastering. The car stopped before an old red brick warehouse by the river, once the coordination center of the Docklands, before being forgotten by the glamour of skyscrapers. Zachary carried Leo out of the car, the chill of water vapor and the scent of rust hitting his nose like a harsh welcome. He pushed a rotting zinc board, revealing a service tunnel entrance known only to those who held the keys to this city. Inside, the darkness was torn apart by Zachary's pale yellow torchlight. They went deep down 3 basement levels, crossing massive steam pipes, groaning like living entities. This was his secret base, a compact technical office equipped with old-style computer hardware possessing remarkable processing power he had quietly accumulated over many years. Leo looked around in awe, seeing digital maps of London's entire power grid and fiber optic network flickering on hazy screens. Zachary sat his son on an old leather chair, the warmth from the running servers beginning to spread, dispelling the freezing cold of the underground vault. Meanwhile, at a 5-star hotel in Edinburgh, Victoria Sterling was leisurely sipping a glass of premium red wine, her red-painted lips curving into a smug smile. She had just received a text from Julian stating the trap was set and the police were closing in on the Richmond villa. Victoria felt no guilt. In her mind, Zachary was merely an outdated link in her perfect life, a grease-stained maintenance man unworthy of standing beside a financial queen. She had prepared a sorrowful speech about a husband suffering a mental breakdown, a perfect script to capture the pity of the London elite. Victoria thought she had won, but she had no idea that the man she looked down upon was beginning to dismantle her kingdom from the very foundations. Zachary sat at the keyboard, his hands gliding like a pianist playing a deathly melody. He was not just a repairman. He was the man who had helped design the security protocols for the very investment fund Victoria managed. He wove through complex firewalls, bypassing the encryption, protecting his wife's personal accounts, using backdoor codes he had secretly installed years ago for maintenance purposes. A window appeared, tearing open the long-hidden truth. Zachary saw that their entire life savings, roughly £2 million, had been cleared into an anonymous account in Jersey over the last 6 months. These transactions were signed with his electronic signature, but timestamps showed they were performed while he was working on a rooftop. Even more painful were the email exchanges between Victoria and Julian. They had planned this 200 days ago. They discussed sending Leo to a strict boarding school in Switzerland immediately after Zachary's arrest so she could freely start a new life with Julian at a villa in the south of France. Julian had even sent Victoria photos of forged medical records regarding Zachary's psychosis, which he had bribed a corrupt psychiatrist to provide. Zachary felt as if his chest were being crushed by a massive stone. The betrayal did not stop at money or affection. It targeted his beloved son directly. Leo lightly touched his father's shoulder, his voice choking in the quiet space. "Dad, we are never going back to that house, are we?" Zachary stopped his hands, turning to look at his trembling son, his eyes bloodshot with resentment and love. "That house was never ours, Leo. It was a cage built with lies. But I promise you, I will build you a world where no one can hurt you ever again." Zachary took a deep breath, the last trace of weakness in his soul being burned away. He was no longer the Zachary of yesterday, the man who always tried to mend what was broken. Tonight, he was the man who would shatter everything. He began uploading malware specifically designed to freeze every financial transaction of the investment fund where Victoria worked. If she wanted to use money to destroy him, he would leave her without a single penny. At the same time, he set up an anonymous live broadcast gateway, connecting directly to every advertising screen in Piccadilly Circus and the internal television systems of the City of London Financial District. He would not send this evidence to the police immediately, for he knew Julian had eyes and ears there. He would turn this entire city into a massive stage where Victoria and Julian would be forced to unmask themselves before millions of viewers. The blue light from the computer screen reflected on Zachary's sharp and resolute face, turning him into a silent god of vengeance in the heart of the earth. The silence of the Docklands no longer brought a sense of loneliness, but the stillness before a terrifying storm that Zachary was about to unleash upon the traitors. He checked the clock, exactly 3:15 in the morning. The real game had only just begun. Zachary knew that tomorrow morning, when the sun rose over the Thames, Victoria Sterling's world would begin to collapse, and she would realize that the greatest mistake of her life was underestimating a man who knew how to master London's underground currents. The air in the Docklands vault grew thick, heavy with the scent of damp and suppressed fury. Zachary Sterling knew that although he might hold the system maps of this city, he still needed another pair of hands to help him dig into the darkest corners of Victoria's digital world. He needed Alastair Crompton. Alastair was a genius hacker, a former employee of GCHQ who had been dismissed without ceremony due to his volatile temperament and a minor substance addiction. More importantly, Alastair owed Zachary his life, for Zachary had pulled him out of a burning server room 5 years ago. The meeting took place at 4:15 in the morning at a dingy cafe that remained open all night on the edge of Shoreditch, where flickering neon lights reflected in filthy puddles of rainwater. Alastair appeared in an oversized windbreaker with dark circles under his eyes, but his intellect remained as sharp as a razor. When Zachary showed him the gathered financial data and spoke of the plan to ship Leo off to Switzerland, Alastair's usual skeptical expression vanished. He looked at Zachary, not with pity, but with the respect reserved for a desperate man who dares to fight back. "I will help you," Alastair said, his voice raspy from smoke. "But not for money. I am helping because I hate those who think they can buy everything with expensive suits in the city." Back in the vault, Alastair connected his ruggedized laptop to the network Zachary had established. He began running complex forensic data recovery algorithms, scanning deep into the hard drive sectors that Victoria believed she had wiped clean forever. The screen flickered with cascades of green code for nearly an hour of intense tension. Then suddenly, Alastair stopped. "I found this," he said, his voice cold. It was in the digital bin of the security camera system at the Richmond villa, a video file overwritten 3 times, but not thoroughly enough. Zachary held his breath as Alastair opened the video file. The grainy image gradually sharpened, revealing the master bedroom of his home. The timestamp was from 2 weeks ago. On the screen, Victoria and Julian were together on his own wedding bed. However, the most horrific part was not that act of physical betrayal, but the conversation that followed. Victoria, while buttoning her shirt, laughed cruelly. "I cannot believe that fool was still busy fixing the heater in the basement while I was transferring £200,000 right over his head." Julian smirked, his voice full of the contempt of a man accustomed to abusing power. "Do not worry. After tonight, he will be nothing more than a psychotic addict in the police records, and that brat Leo will be sent so far away he will forget who his father even is." The rage within Zachary did not explode. It condensed into a block of razor-sharp ice. He saw the ultimate contempt they held for him and his son. They did not just want to steal money, they wanted to destroy his dignity and erase Leo's existence. Alistair looked at Zachary, expecting a breakdown, but he only saw a terrifying determination. "We will not send this to the police right now," Zachary said, his voice absurdly calm. "We will show all of London." He explained his mad plan to hijack the major advertising screens. Alistair, for the first time that night, flashed a genuine smile. "You are truly mad, Zachary, but I like it. I will set up the transmission gateway." Meanwhile in Richmond, the rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and cold. Julian Vane stood before the gates of Victoria's villa, watching 2 police cars depart in vain. There was no Zachary, no scene of madness. His perfect script had been derailed. He pulled out his phone and called a former subordinate in the traffic police, demanding the retrieval of ANPR data across the city to find Zachary's Land Rover. He knew Zachary was not simply running away. He sensed the dangerous scent of a wounded beast turning back to bite. Julian grit his teeth. He would not let a maintenance man ruin his £1,000,000 retirement plan in the south of France. The hunt had officially begun, no longer a game of cat and mouse, but a life-and-death struggle between 2 men who understood the darkness of London better than anyone. Zachary Sterling stared at the ancient oak trees lining the path into the affluent Richmond area through the glass of an old maintenance van he had borrowed from a derelict yard. He had left his son back at the Docklands vault under Alistair's strict protection. This was a solitary journey into the lion's den, an infiltration Zachary knew that if he miscalculated by even a millisecond, he would lose Leo forever. The Richmond villa emerged amidst the misty fog, appearing as perfect and peaceful as a painting. But to Zachary, it was the embodiment of a hell built with flowery lies. The 2 police cars from earlier had already departed, but the faint yellow light flickering from the second-floor study indicated that Julian Vane was still there, the hunter patiently waiting for his prey to walk into the trap. Zachary did not use the main entrance or any conventional way in. He moved silently in the shadows of the trees, advancing towards the western wall where the technical ventilation system was located. Victoria had always looked down on her husband's work. She had never paid attention to the fact that Zachary had personally redesigned the entire internal security system of this house. She did not know there was a 60-centimeter blind spot right below the infrared sensor by the hydrangea flower bed, a flaw Zachary had intentionally left as a backup instinct of a seasoned maintenance engineer. He slipped through the narrow gap of the basement vent, the cold sensation of stone against his skin making his senses sharper than ever before. Inside the house, the scent of lavender that Victoria loved hit Zachary's nose, bringing back memories of a time of manufactured happiness. He heard the heavy thud of footsteps on the oak flooring upstairs, accompanied by Julian's raspy voice. He was furious. "I told you to bolt the windows," the former officer growled. "That man is not as stupid as you think. He understands this house better than anyone." Victoria's voice followed, trembling, but still full of ruthless calculation. "Julian, you must stay calm. The police have already filed him as a madman. Even if he returns, as long as you shoot in self-defense, it will all be over. No one questions the death of a lunatic attacking his wife." Zachary crouched behind the thick wooden door of the study, his heart pounding like a hammer against his chest. He saw Julian's shadow cast upon the wall through the narrow door gap. He was holding the original will, the most critical document Victoria had forced Zachary to sign while he was semi-conscious under the influence of high-dose sedatives. It was proof of him unintentionally waiving all rights to assets and Leo's custody. Zachary knew he had to reclaim it. He waited for Julian to turn towards the window to smoke, then acted with the precision of a machine. He crawled across the carpeted floor, reaching into the secret drawer beneath the desk where he had designed a discreet magnetic latch. The latch clicked open with a tiny sound. Zachary secured the file along with a portable hard drive containing Victoria's original financial planning drafts before they were altered. At that exact moment, the floorboards creaked softly under his feet. Julian spun around, his hawk-like eyes scanning the dark room. "Someone is here," he shouted and drew a handgun from his holster. Zachary had no way back. He lunged upward, shoving the heavy wooden bookcase towards Julian, creating a crashing sound that echoed throughout the villa. Books fell everywhere like a rain of paper, creating a temporary screen. Zachary sprinted from the room, running along the dark corridor he knew by heart down to every centimeter. Julian fired. The dry explosion tore through the Richmond silence, the bullet slamming directly into their wedding photo on the wall, shattering the protective glass into 1,000 pieces. Zachary did not look back. He did not run to the main door where Julian could easily take aim. Instead, he dove into the small bathroom at the end of the hall, pulling hard on the master circuit breaker cord he had secretly connected from the main power system. A loud pop erupted from the central control panel in the basement, plunging the entire house into thick darkness due to a deliberate short circuit. In that perfect darkness, Zachary Sterling was the master. He heard Victoria's terrified scream and Julian's cursing as he struggled to find a torch. Zachary moved silently like a ghost, crossing the living room and escaping through the kitchen window he had opened earlier. He vaulted over the fence, jumped into the alley behind, and climbed into the van that was idling in wait. His hands gripped the file and the hard drive, a surge of victory beginning to spread through his veins instead of the earlier fear. As the van sped into the night, Zachary looked back at the house through the rearview mirror. Julian's torchlight was scanning wildly across the windows, helpless and hopeless. Zachary Sterling, the underestimated maintenance engineer, had just launched a direct strike into the heart of the enemy and emerged victorious. He now had all the evidence to not only save himself, but to send both Victoria and Julian to prison forever. He felt an intense surge of freedom. He was no longer a victim of betrayal. He was the architect of their downfall. Chapter 5 concludes with Zachary driving back to Docklands under the dim London moon. His face was set, his eyes burning with ironclad resolve. He was ready for the final chapter, where he would activate the broadcast system and expose this entire brutal truth before millions of people. A deep sense of emotion rose within him as he thought of Leo's face waiting for him. "I have reclaimed your future, Leo," he promised silently. "Tomorrow morning, the truth will be as brilliant as the sun over the River Thames, and the ghosts of lies will have to vanish forever." The atmosphere inside the Richmond villa thickened as if every molecule of oxygen had been sucked out the moment Zachary Sterling stepped through the main door at 8 o'clock in the evening. He sat quietly in the old armchair in the living room, hands once dismissed as only capable of holding a spanner, now grasping the fate of an entire financial empire. Victoria entered shortly after with Julian Vane, both exuding the confidence of those who believed they completely owned the game. Julian held a handgun, his gaze cold as cooled steel, while Victoria looked at her husband with ultimate contempt. She threw a stack of documents onto the table, her voice as sharp as a razor. "Sign it, Zachary. Sign the voluntary admission to the psychiatric ward and waive your parental rights. Then you shall live. Do not force Julian to stain my floor." Zachary looked up, his face devoid of a single flicker of fear, replaced instead by a mysterious smile that made Victoria feel momentarily uneasy. "You always thought I was at the bottom of the system," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You thought power lay in bank account digits or expensive suits. But you forgot one fundamental thing. I am the one who built this security system. I know every heartbeat of the server, every hidden corner of the transmission. Tonight, I am not signing your papers. I am signing the death warrant for your reputations." Julian smirked, stepping forward to crush Zachary's throat. "What are you babbling about, you piece of maintenance rubbish?" He raised his hand to strike, but Zachary simply pressed a button on his old mobile phone. Instantly, every television screen in the house, along with 16 massive advertising screens at Piccadilly Circus and thousands of internal computers at Victoria's investment fund, flared to life. Images of Victoria and Julian in bed, accompanied by the audio recording of them discussing the staged accident and shipping Leo to Switzerland, began broadcasting live before millions of Londoners. Victoria collapsed to the floor, her face as white as a corpse as she watched the live social media views jump from 100 to 10,000, then 50,000 in seconds. Angry comments poured in like a flood. The entire London financial world was witnessing the sordid truth behind the glamorous exterior of the city's most prestigious fund manager. Julian frantically lunged to smash Zachary's phone, but a loud explosion from the main door stopped him. The Metropolitan Police tactical unit stormed in with heavy weaponry, red laser lights scanning the room. Julian Vane dropped the weapon immediately. The commander's shout echoed through the house. Julian intended to resist, but Zachary was too fast. With the strength of a workman accustomed to grappling with heavy metal for 15 years, he lunged upward, grabbed Julian's gun arm, and twisted it back with a skilled lock. The sound of bones cracking mingled with the former officer's cry of agony. Julian slumped to the floor, restrained and handcuffed in absolute helplessness. Victoria could only sit there, eyes vacant as she stared at the television still broadcasting her own confession. Her arrogance had been crushed into ash by the very man she once deemed worthless. As the London fog began to dissipate at dawn, Zachary Sterling stepped out of the Richmond villa for the final time. He carried no money or expensive belongings. The only thing in his hand was Leo's drawing of the two of them holding hands. Justice does not always come from luxurious courtrooms. Sometimes it is served by an honest man pushed to the brink. Zachary drove towards the Docklands, where Leo was waiting by the River Thames. The first light of the new day shone upon the river, turning the gray water into a shimmering ribbon of gold. Zachary held his son tightly, the warmth from the child healing every wound in his heart. "I have done it, Leo," Zachary whispered into his ear, his voice choking with happiness. "We are free." The boy looked at his father with infinite pride, knowing his dad was not just an engineer who fixed broken things, but a hero who had fixed a devastated life. From here, a brighter new chapter would open for the two of them, where the darkness of lies and betrayal no longer existed. Zachary Sterling had proven to the world that a father's heart can create miracles far beyond any power system on earth. The story of Zachary and his resilience is a reminder that justice always stands with those who bravely fight for the truth. Thank you for joining Zachary and his son through 6 dramatic chapters of the Thames Shadows. If you love this journey for justice and admire the sacred bond between father and son, please like the video and subscribe to the channel right now to not miss the next captivating, dramatic storytelling episodes. Do not forget to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on the ending for Victoria and Julian below. Your support is our greatest inspiration to continue creating. See you in the upcoming videos.